Good start there, Peter. Welcome to Still Kicking with Billy Hauer. How nice to be back with you guys. I hope you're out there anyway. 2017, and we're going to talk about love today. I thought, let's take a break and talk about love. After all, it's springtime, and it's a beautiful day here in Louisville. I think it's close to 80 degrees. I was just sitting out on my front porch in my bare feet, reading the New Yorker, which was pretty funny. They had a thing about Obama taking $400,000 from Cantor Fitzgerald. It was funny. Anyway, it did say something. This is not about love, but why not say? Because it's in my mind. I just read it. Clinton, since 2001, has collected $153 million in speaking fees. So I think that's pretty significant and interesting. But let's talk about love, because it's spring. And I think about love a lot. And I'll just mention briefly this because I follow Jesus, and he talks about love a lot. And I wonder what it is. And a long time ago, I read this book. Here it is right here. The Road Less Traveled. You may remember it, by Dr. M. Scott Peck, M.D. I think he was a psychiatrist. And I'm not sure. It's been a long time since I've read it. But it really did change the way I look at love. And I give him all credit for this idea, but it's an idea that stuck with me all over the years because he says, I tend to agree with this, that love, most people think love is this emotion that, it's when you feel good about somebody, or, it starts out maybe with your pheromones matching their pheromone receptors and vice versa, the chemistry. But he says that it's not an emotion, because if you think about emotions are really, they come and go, They just come and go. You feel this way, and then you don't feel that way. And, you finally get some rest, and so you're no longer irritated, or whatever it is. But what he says love is that it's a point of view. And the opposite of love is not hate, or something like that, which most people like to say these days. The opposite of love is the selfish point of view. So basically, love cares, and selfishness doesn't care. And I think that's basically what it is. And because it's a decision you make to have this point of view, to care about your neighbor, or to care about the world, or to care about your spouse, or to care about your father and your mother, or your brothers and sisters, this is what love is. And so it doesn't come and go. It's a decision you made to care. And it's hard. It's a lot harder than being selfish, and I think you don't have to think much to realize that. We might talk about it a little later. And a lot of people think that the opposite of love is hate, but if you think about it, hate usually comes from a selfish place. When it's all about you, when all you care about is your well-being, it's easy to badmouth people and hurt people, especially if you feel like they've hurt you. And I think that also selfishness breeds a lot of greed. And I think greed is basically the fear of not having enough of something. Not necessarily just money, but sex or status or prestige, whatever it is. And I think greed is the fear. It's a fear. And selfishness is fearful because it's all about me. Oh, protect me. Oh, protect my money, protect my life, protect my health, that kind of thing. And love, will take a risk. If your friend has the flu, love will say, well, maybe if I, don't touch my face while I'm there and wash my hands before I leave, I'll be all right. And you take the chance and you help your friend who's sick. And selfishness isn't going to do that. And I think the opposite of greed is gratitude. And I think that comes from love. Because when you care, you not only care about your friends, but you care to notice what's going on around you. And you care to be grateful for what you have, because greed being the fear of not having enough, gratitude is just the appreciation of what you have. And greedy people don't really do that because they always say more, I need more. And gratitude is a good place to be because it's a much less stressful place to be. I also think that love breeds a lot of things. The loving point of view breeds kindness in people. And I'm not the kindest person or the most grateful person, but it's something I'm working on because I'm thinking about love and how I can apply it not only to my life, but to my political point of views. And to everything, every little encounter I have during the day, and especially to this show. Howard, by the way, I'm sorry, I don't know if I even said that. It is welcome back to Still Kicking with Billy Howard, and I am still kicking, as you can see. I have loved myself enough to take care of myself. And that's the funny thing about love. You know, selfishness, is, you might say, was something you got to have to survive, and it's true. You've got to care about yourself enough to survive. You don't want to give away all your food, you know. You don't want to give away your house where you live, but you might share it. But anyway, you know, and there's a spectrum between love and selfishness. And you know, you have to be, or between just selfishness. There's a selfishness spectrum, and it goes basically from survival selfishness all the way up to evil. Because I really do believe evil is just a high degree of selfishness. Think about Jeffrey Dahmer, for example. You may not remember him. I think he was from Minnesota or somewhere, but somewhere up north, and he murdered a bunch of young boys. He would pick them up at the gay bar or wherever he picked them up, and he would get them home, and he had sex with them, and then he tortured them, and then he killed them, and then he dismembered them and put them in his freezer. And he was later murdered in prison. The prison guards did not protect him, which was bad, I think, because Jeffrey Dahmer never had a chance to really ever think about what he did, but it may be that he had a mental defect. It may be that he just had no empathy. And I don't know if some people are born that way. I don't know, but it's an extreme form of selfishness, because Jeffrey Dahmer did not care about those boys, about the terror they experienced, the pain they experienced. He did not care about the parents or the friends of those boys that he killed. And it was pretty evil. But, you know, there's all kinds of evil. Bernie Madoff, financial evil. He did not care either. And again, it may be the same thing, some sort of psychological quirk. I don't want to judge anybody. And we're going to talk about that a little later too. But I just want to talk about how I think about love. I think that love is often very generous. And I think selfishness is often very grasping. And I tell you, I try to be generous as I can be, and it just feels great. You know, and it's not because the people thank you for the money or the time, but it just feels good to know that you're doing something to make it better for somebody. And that's what I hope this show will do ultimately. That's what I hope my life will do. And I hope it's what your life will do, because it's a great way to live. And, you know, and this is where I really have trouble. I think love also helps you to develop your patience. When you care about other people, you're more likely to take the time to listen to them, even if they're not articulate and they have a hard time expressing themselves. And I think that, you know, selfishness is often very impatient. Let's go, you know. Selfishness can be good, and, you know, like if you're results oriented, you know, and you have to just cut out all the niceties. You know, I can understand that if you're trying to get a big giant ship to go this way. But, you know, it often goes too far, and that's always sad. But not all leaders are that way. Some people manage to care about their people, and it's often good to care about your people on a big project, because they do better work. And better work makes for a more successful project of any kind. And I'll tell you what, trying so hard to practice love, and I got to tell you, I am no expert at it. It's the hardest thing in the world, but it has made me a happier person. It really has. And when I was selfish, when I was a hedonistic guy living in Key West, it wasn't not so happy. I had a lot of thrills and good times, but there wasn't that continuous happiness. So when I think about love in a romantic relationship or in a marriage, and I've been into some long-term relationships, I think that kind of love should never be competitive. I don't think love is competitive. I think love is more cooperative. Love wants to uplift everybody around it. And I think that I've lost my train of thought, really. What was I saying, Pete?
Cooperative. Love is cooperative.
Yeah, I think it's cooperative. And I think in a relationship, thank you, Pete. I think in a relationship, it should be a safe harbor. There should be in your spouse. There should only be a listening ear and an open heart and the desire to support your person. And I see a lot of people in relationships, even married or not married, and they're very competitive, and it makes me sad because it's safe. I'm single and I live here alone, and this is my place where I'm safe. Nobody abuses me in here, and if they do, I show them the door as quickly and as nicely as I can. But anyway, I think love is that way. I think love tends to be content, and selfishness is always restless because it's always more and more and more. And I think, love is more work, and you tend to do good works when you love people, when you listen to them or help them out. And I think, selfishness is pretty much the mindset of a criminal. And I think love doesn't like vengeance. I think love is just more for the opposite of vengeance, forgiveness. And forgiveness is the key to peace, because we have to forgive our enemies and we have to love them. And if we seek vengeance, all we do is create a cycle of violence. And love also, especially in relationships, whether it's friends, but especially in a domestic relationship, love does not want to control the people it loves. Love gives freedom. Love, because I want freedom, I want you to be free. I don't want to control you. I don't want to tell you what's politically correct to say or anything like that. But love is more work, and selfishness is easy because there's no commitments, no duty, no expectation, only expectation and desire. No listening, no giving, no humility. So, and what it really takes to love, and this is what I've found over the last few years where I've really tried to apply the teachings of Christ, is that it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to say you're sorry. It takes a lot of courage to say you're wrong. But, selfishness is for cowards, Selfishness always are ready to fight. Selfish people are always ready to pull the trigger. And selfish people don't do courageous things. They're always self-preserving and very cowardly. And I want to get this into politics a little bit. I think that it's important to love Donald Trump. I want to remind my liberal friends that Donald Trump is a human being. And there's a lot of good things you can say about him. And and you can only make peace with your enemies. And you may consider Donald Trump an enemy, or Kim Jong-un, or Vladimir Putin, but you can't make peace with your allies. You have to make it with your enemies. And to do that, you need to find good things to say about your enemies. And if you hate Trump, well, consider this. Yes, he got a lot of money handed to him on a silver platter, like many, many people of families like that get. They get to start on third base, as it's said. But he's done well with it, So far with my inheritance, I haven't done a whole lot. But Trump is brave, and he takes chances, and he borrows money, and boy, he's done pretty well. I mean, I can only imagine what it costs to fly around the world in these big giant jets that he owns. But to love Trump would be to acknowledge that, and to acknowledge that he has a very tight-knit family, and it's so functional that they actually run this business together. They trust each other to do that. And I think that's pretty incredible from my point of view. And I think even as a liberal, and I'm such a liberal, I've been voting for Nader, and in this last election, Dr. Jill Stein. But I can love Trump, and I can support his very best goals. And I think his best goal is to restore the middle class. And I think it's something that I hope we'll do soon. I also, I want to say, let's just bring this really quickly to religion, because we don't have much time left, and I want to get going. But it is my Christianity that's made me think a lot about love. And God gave us really just two commandments as Christians. You may have heard the gospel or the good news of Jesus. He claimed to be the Son of God, and he said, I'm going to free you from Leviticus and from the Ten Commandments. All you have to do is believe that I am the Son of God. And the two commandments he gave us is to love God and to love each other as you love yourself, but to love God with all your heart. And that's easy to do. And the great thing about God is he wants our love. And why wouldn't we? I want your love. I want God's love. And I do want to love God. I mean, if there is a creator and is called God or known as God, and I do believe there is, I believe in miracles and all this planets and universes. It's just, I do. And I think it's great that he wants us to love each other. But boy, that is so hard. It's so hard to love people who've hurt you. It's so hard to love your enemies. And he begged us. He didn't command us, but he begged us to not judge each other. And we do all the time, especially the people we feel have hurt us or somehow cheated us. So, Trump has been in some trouble for saying things nice about Putin or Kim Jong-un or Al-Sisi of Egypt or Duterte of the Philippines. But he may be the peacemaker we've been looking for, because you can only make peace with your enemies. And these people, not Egypt so much, or the Philippines, but things they're doing we're not for as a democratic people and as liberal people. Same with Iran as Islamic State. And he's saying these nice things because that's a good way to make peace. Let's take an extreme case, the Islamic State. They've been beheading people and all this. Well, and I like to point out that so does Saudi Arabia and some other countries. But the Islamic State does this, and they're pretty tough and they're pretty mean. But there's two things I want to bring up. Once I was listening to NPR, and it was a roundtable discussion that the reporter wasn't controlling as much, and they had this Jordanian merchant on, and he had a store at the Turkish refugee camp for Syrians. And he had been in Damascus, but he was a refugee too, but he was continuing to be a merchant. And he said, when my convoys cross the Middle East through all these different countries, there's only one country we don't have to pay bribes, and that's the Islamic State. So we can pat old Baghdadi on the back and say, well, good for you. And I'll tell you what, I think it was last summer when there was a heat wave in the Middle East, in Baghdad and Damascus and all those big cities there, and there were blackouts, especially in Baghdad, blackouts, brownouts, and people were dying in the heat because they couldn't get the air on. But in Mosul and Raqqa, there were no blackouts. The electricity stayed on and the air conditioning stayed humming. So evidently there's plenty of engineers within the Islamic State's society, and they are working and they are effective. So you can give them credit for that and try to push them in a better direction, because let's face it, Islam hasn't changed that much in the last 1,000 years or so. And, I don't think it's realistic to expect it to change overnight. All we can hope is to maybe do some harm reduction, but I always say hope for the best. Hope, that by loving them, they will see the value of love and discover the love of Islam, which I'm sure Islam has. So you can only make peace with your enemies. God is love, he says. And he never controls. And that's the amazing thing about God. And that's another thing that I like about him. He didn't try to make us the Borg. He didn't try to make us love him, or pay us to love him. He is uncontrolling. He wants us to freely choose to love him. And I want the same thing. That's why I really don't like to pay for sex. And don't intend to pay for sex, because I want, even though I'm older and probably am getting into that market, but I want people to love me for who I am, and whether they're younger or older. So he wants our love, and he wants your love. And, love really does work for a happy life. And selfishness, I think, just makes happiness impossible. You might have a thrill, but I don't think you're going to have any real happiness. And I am also a selfish person. I do survive. I do take care of myself. And most of us are a little bit selfish, but I'm working on it. I'm working to be more loving and less selfish. And all the people in my little church at the Westport Road Baptist Church are working diligently to love each other. And I was the first gay guy I think they've ever had, and they have all come around to loving me. And, Christ said, when he was begging everybody to be nice to everybody and to not judge each other, he said, let them know us by our love. And I even try to love those who wish to harm me, because what kind of state do you have to be in to want to harm somebody else? And so those are the people who probably need love the most. But leave those people if they abuse you and if they're mean. You know, shake the dust from your shoes and walk away. And that doesn't mean you quit caring about them or loving them, but stay open to them, but leave when they're mean. Don't stick around. Love yourself. You deserve love. Protect yourself. We all deserve love, especially the weakest among us. And remember, I love you, and thanks for tuning in. And we'll be back next Tuesday. That is, if I'm still kicking. Thanks for coming by. Oh, live up. Be free. And remember, I love you.